Oh, there's so many yummy vegetarian options out there. You could try like lentil soup, veggie burgers, tofu stir fry. The possibilities are endless. All right, let's talk about something that every single entrepreneur thinks about. You start a new business, you're excited, but you're probably losing money at the beginning. That's normal, right? But what if the government could just decide those losses aren't legitimate simply because you aren't profitable yet? It sounds crazy, but it happens. So today we're going to dive deep into a landmark legal case called Gideon, a case that actually established a critical protection for all startups, the right to a reasonable startup time. I mean, that's the real question, isn't it? It's the one that probably keeps you up at night if you've just launched a new venture. You're pouring your heart, your soul, your savings into this thing, but the profits? Well, they just aren't there yet. You're in the red. So does that mean your business isn't a real business? Could the tax authorities actually come in and say, nope, sorry, those losses don't count? That is exactly the issue we are going to explore. To really understand this principle, we have to start with the story behind it. You know, this isn't just some abstract legal theory cooked up in a boardroom. It all started with real people, a real business, and a very real problem. So let's meet the folks at the heart of the Gideon case. So picture this. Our story features a doctor and her husband. They decided to start a new business venture together by acquiring a rental property. I mean, it's a classic entrepreneurial move, something a lot of people do. But like so many new ventures, they almost immediately ran into some serious headwinds. And it's important to know, they weren't just messing things up or mismanaging the place. They got hit by adverse economic factors, things completely beyond their control. And as a result, the properties started losing money. And that's when the situation went from bad to worse. You see, those early losses, the kind of losses that are incredibly common for startups, they ended up raising a huge red flag for the Canada Revenue Agency, or the CRA. The CRA took a look at their tax returns and decided to take some serious action. They went back and disallowed the couple's rental losses, not just for 1 year, but for a full 3 years. Can you just imagine getting that notice in the mail? All the money you thought you could claim as a business loss suddenly just vanishes. A huge financial hit. So what was the CRA's official reasoning for doing this? Well, their entire argument really boiled down to one single, very powerful phrase: no reasonable expectation of profit. Essentially, they were saying that because the venture wasn't profitable yet, and in their view didn't look like it was going to be, it wasn't a legitimate business that could claim legitimate losses. And this right here perfectly illustrates the core of the conflict. It's a total clash of perspectives. On one side, you have the tax authorities saying, show us the profits right now. And on the other side, you've got the entrepreneurs saying, whoa, hold on a second. We are a legitimate business. We're just in our startup phase. We need time to get there. This was the battle line that was drawn. But the story doesn't end there. This couple, they didn't just roll over and accept the ruling. No way. They decided to fight back. They set out to prove that their rental property wasn't just some hobby or clever tax write-off scheme, but a genuine business with a very clear intent to become profitable down the road. So let's just think about that. How would you do it? If you had to stand in front of a judge and prove that your money-losing business was totally legitimate, what kind of evidence would you show them? Well, the actions this couple took became the absolute textbook example of how to do it right. Their entire case really came down to 3 clear, simple, demonstrable actions. They showed that they weren't just sitting around hoping for profit to magically appear. They were actively and strategically working towards it. This was their game plan. Okay, first, and this is absolutely fundamental, they weren't renting the place to their cousin for $100 a month. They provided proof that they were charging rent at a fair market rate. This is such a crucial signal that you're operating a real commercial venture, not just subsidizing a property for a friend or family member. It shows you're in it to make money.
Second, they were incredibly smart with their finances. They weren't just paying the minimum, they were aggressively paying down their mortgage to cut down on those killer interest payments. Now here's the key point. This action didn't create any immediate profit, but what it did do was directly improve their future profitability. It proved they had a long-term strategy and were serious about the financial health of their business. And third, and this is so powerful visually, they could show a clear trend. Just look at this chart. Over the exact 3 years the CRA was questioning, you can see their losses were steadily, consistently decreasing. Year 1, a big loss. Year 2, a smaller loss. Year 3, smaller still. They weren't profitable yet, no, but the trajectory was undeniable. The financial story was moving in exactly the right direction. So, armed with all this evidence, the case went to court. And what happened next?
Well, it would go on to set a major precedent for countless new businesses and entrepreneurs all across the country. This was a big moment. And the verdict? A decisive, complete victory for the taxpayers. The Federal Court of Appeal looked at all the evidence, the fair rent, the mortgage payments, the downward trend in losses, and they completely overturned the CRA's assessment. Just like that, the 3 years of losses were allowed. And the court didn't just disagree with the CRA, the judge's language was incredibly strong. The ruling specifically scolded the CRA for this exact failure, for not allowing the business, and I'm quoting here, sufficient startup time to become profitable. That phrase, sufficient startup time, that changes everything. The judge's logic was crystal clear. He looked at their actions, all the things we just talked about, and he concluded that even though there was no profit yet, there was absolutely a reasonable expectation of profit in the future. Their conduct, their behavior, their strategy, that's what proved their intent. Okay, so this is more than just an interesting story from a law book. The Gideon case established a vital legal concept, a principle that you can actually use to protect your own venture. This is where it gets really practical. It's called the sufficient startup time principle. The best way to think of it is as a grace period. It's like a runway for an airplane. If you are conducting your business in a professional, serious manner, the law recognizes that you need time to get off the ground. Profitability isn't a switch you can just flip on day one. You need time to build, to grow, and to establish yourself. So what are the practical, real-world takeaways for your business? Well, first, have a documented business plan. Write it down. Second, actively manage your finances to improve your bottom line over time, just like the couple in our story. Third, make sure you can show a clear trend of improvement, even if it's slow. And finally, and this is so important, remember this. Early losses are perfectly acceptable as long as they are part of a credible journey towards future profit. If you take away only one thing from this explainer, let it be this. The tax authorities, and more importantly, the courts, are often less concerned with whether your business is profitable today. They are much more concerned with the credibility of your plan to be profitable tomorrow. It's all about the story your actions and your numbers tell over time.
And that really leaves us with a final question to think about for your own venture. If an auditor were to come in and put your business under a microscope today, right now, what story would they see? Would they see a story of random losses and wishful thinking? Or would they see a story of a professionally managed venture on a clear, documented path to success? It's something we're thinking about.